Hi everyone and welcome back to Uni Unpacked. Today we're going to be talking about life after uni and we have two special guests coming on to join us today. The first of which is Matt. Would you like to say hello, Matt?
Hello, I'm Matt. I work in the communications team here at the university, but I also have a double life, not quite Batman, but I am the social media manager, or have been the social media manager for the past 5 years at Bath City Football Club.
Very nice.
Perfect. I had an idea, and I think we should all talk about our personal experiences with life after uni, because I think that it's not talked about enough, and I think that we should shed light on what we all did after we graduated. Matt, do you want to go first?
I would love to go first. I was a sort of year after COVID graduate, so that was always good fun. I graduated in a tent and was sort of like, oh, what's going to happen next?
In a tent?
In a tent, yes. And a lot of people got the Abbey, or nowadays obviously they get the Forum.
Yeah.
But I was a tent dweller, which was fun. But I had sort of a choice. I think when I left, I think a lot of people have the same thing. It's like, okay, am I going to go home and am I going to try and set myself up at home? But home for me is Ipswich and nothing really happens there.
Yeah.
Or do I really force myself to stay in Bath and try and set myself up? And I went for the latter and thankfully have managed to sustain myself and stay here ever since. But it's not an easy decision because, I mean, for me, I'm like 4 hours away from home and all that kind of thing. But it's a big part of that for me was, as I say, this sort of double life that I have doing the stuff with Bath City Football Club. I started doing that, I think probably 2 or 3 months after I left uni, and I was just like, got any scope for me to come and help out? And they wrote me in, and I couldn't get away afterwards. But it's a very, I think when someone says to you, right, okay, you're gone now, and it's you think, oh, I don't have all this sort of same mindset that maybe you did when you were at university. It's you've got to really quickly lock into it, I guess.
Definitely.
I think there's so much pressure as well, like straight after uni, like you said, like you live 4 hours away, so you kind of had to make that decision quite fast. And the job that you went into, did you expect to go into it? Did you want to go into it, or was it kind of like an opportunity that
So
arose?
I was quite lucky. I went into games journalism to start off with. So I was a creative writing and film studies student here, and I'm sort of trying to blend those two things and find what I wanted to do. So I went into games journalism, and I was freelance for quite a long time. And I think initially, I was freelancing, and then I was volunteering. To say I was operating at a loss would be, the bit of an understatement. But I was trying to upskill myself throughout the whole of that. And I was a big believer when I was at uni that all of the stuff that you do away from studies is just as important as what you do when you study. So I wrote my own blog on things that I thought were probably really important at the time, but were probably really cringy to read going back. But that helped me get gigs in sports journalism and games journalism. And then, the stuff that I'd done with the football club, despite the fact I've never been paid for it, never would want to be paid for it. I've seen a lot of benefits for it in other ways, definitely.
I think it's really important as well that you mentioned like getting that practical experience alongside of university, because obviously university in itself is quite theory related for a lot of courses. I took business, so mine was a lot of like textbook stuff, and I think it's really important as well to seek that for yourself and have that kind of proactiveness to kind of go out, get that practical experience alongside, so that you can kind of come out of uni and kind of be like, well, I've got this degree, but I've also got this kind of experience that I've kind of gone and found myself.
Yeah. Did you, when you went for the Bath City sort of stint, did you ask them like if there was any opportunities available, or did you kind of just did it sort of just unexpectedly?
Yeah, I just reached out. I just reached out not knowing what kind of response I'd get. But I think one of the things that's probably quite crucial to say is if you are sort of going to somebody and saying, look, I'm going to help you for nothing, or is there anything I can do to help you for nothing? That's a really, I remember actually when I finished uni, I reached out to a sports journalist that I knew back in Ipswich, and he said to me something that I think at the time was quite difficult to stomach, but I get it. He was like, well, what are you willing to do for nothing? This is a market where everyone wants to get into these roles.
Yeah.
What are you going to do for nothing? And I think that is really, really difficult to sort of justify. I'm a creative person. I deserve to be paid for what I do. But the experience that you get through not having a paid role, but the access and the opportunity that gives you, I think massively amplifies your chances of,
Yeah.
employment. I'm very lucky. I'm in a good job at the age I'm at, which isn't 35, despite what some hosts might
I
think.
genuinely think that.
I've
I have
never
no
said that in my
recollection.
life.
I believe it's 32, not
Sorry,
35, Matt.
32.
So
I said 35.
You said 35. But it's that was, I'm lucky to be in the position I am now because I have this 5 years working. Yes, it's volunteer experience, but it's still real world experience. It's
Yeah.
the experience I've had at that football club outweigh, pretty much any of the workplace stuff that I've had, because it's been so ridiculous, and all of the things that you've had to do. And if somebody asked me can I work to tight deadlines? Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the stuff I did there, you're basically working to the next 5 seconds. So it's those valuable life skills. And I think sometimes I work with quite a few student volunteers now. Someone's going to be taking up the role that I've been doing at the end of this season. And the ones that come in with that attitude are like, I'm here to learn. I think that's really great, and I feel very lucky to work with a lot of students that are keen to do that. And it's good to see that people still have that want, because eventually that pays off in the
Yeah.
long term.
because I was about to say, you mentioned you feel lucky, but sometimes it's not just luck, and it's going out and having that initiative to find what you want to do. And if that does mean like working for nothing, then that's what you start off kind of doing. So I think that's really important as well.
Definitely. Would you say that your like favorite part about it is kind of like being able to grow and just like have those experiences? And as much as you're not being paid, like I suppose you're kind of here to say that like volunteering isn't sort of what it's necessarily stigmatized to be, if you know
Yeah,
what I mean.
yeah.
Like it's okay to sort of do stuff for no money, but also gain the experience. And I'm sure you've met so many different people as
Oh
well.
yeah,
And
massively.
yeah, like as you say, gained like almost like invaluable skills that you couldn't get whilst you're at university or on your degree.
Yeah, and I think honestly it links back to what you were saying earlier, Molly. Like for me, and I realised it sort of maybe in my last year of university, I was never going to have as much free time
Yeah.
as those 3 years. Like I know you obviously study and you turn up and
Yeah.
you hustle, but then it's like, right, what am I going to do with the rest of these hours? And I think we've all probably done it when you're at uni. You're like, right, what am I going to do that's going to help me move forward? And linking that then into what I've done with the football club stuff, it is exactly like you said. I've met so many amazing people, and some not so amazing people, but how much of a privilege is that as well, because that's
Yeah.
told me how to deal with that. I
Yeah.
don't have to get on with everybody, but as long as I'm professional, and there's been so many genuine human moments as well, because I've worked with volunteers, and doing that is quite fulfilling. And I've never seen a penny for it, and I would never want to see a penny for it. I'm leaving at the end of this year simply because it's a long time to do it, but it's I'm leaving, and I don't really want thanks for it or congratulations or anything. I just want to be like, I've done my bit, and it's like pass that on. And we're very lucky that there's a student, Ollie, who's going to be taking that up, and he's doing that during his time at uni, which I'm sure is going to be massively beneficial to him.
Definitely.
You walk out the door and you're going to employees in, to be honest, a very saturated market, saying, "Well, I've done all of this whilst I'm here." But yeah, at first a difficult thing to justify, but then
I think so, yeah.
surprisingly very fulfilling, I think,
Yeah.
as well.
And do you think that's something that will like help you in your future, obviously, in your career prospects, or where you want to grow in your career? Do you think that like that's something that you can bring forward with you, the stuff that you've learned from that?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I hope
Definitely.
it doesn't all go downhill.
But it's all along the same lines though. So obviously like it's to do with like social media like
Yeah.
things. So obviously like all the things that you've learned theoretically and like the practical
yeah,
sides
absolutely,
of
yeah.
things like you can use side by side in this job that you do.
Yeah, and I think it's transferable, right?
Yeah.
I'm always thought I wrote a sports blog when I was at university. I've always been obsessed with football. It's been my thing. I thought I could write about it really well, and turns out everybody else can write about it really well. So, what am I saying that's different? What am I saying
Yeah.
that's unique? Went and worked in sport and was like, yeah, that's great. But do you know what, actually? And that's another thing about volunteering. It also gives you an opportunity to work out if this thing is for you or it really isn't. For me, I loved everything I've done down there, but I would never personally it's not my passion. It's not like I want to work in this field in the same way. And then being able to take those skills and transfer them into something. Like if you'd have told me when I left university that I was going to come back and work here, I'd have thought you were mad. But like I do, and I love it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever really sort of gone deep enough, but like a university or workplaces in general, they're just like football clubs. You've got your managers, you've got your players, you've got your day-to-day, you've got your big moments, all that kind of stuff. You know, maybe you don't get relegated at the end of the year, but like it's part of it, and I've got that because I've done that, and I've experienced it, and it's been it's been really great and really fulfilling, and I'm sure part of me will miss it, but that being rooted in that volunteering aspect and having something to do and feeling like you're working towards not just self-improvement, being able to help something else rise up as well, I think is incredibly
Really
fulfilling.
important.
Definitely.
Oh, see, we're all BSU alum because you graduated in 2024. So did you want to kind of go over what you did after uni?
Yeah, so I think like Matt was saying, like I think it's very typical in third year to have a lot of anxiety about sort of where you're going to go and what you're going to do and like how you're going to approach anything. And to be honest, I don't think like things like volunteering were really on my radar because personally I find that like reaching out part very difficult, and I think a lot of people probably struggle with that as well. But as you can say, you can literally reach out to someone and it turn into something. So I feel like that would have been some of that would have ended up at some point. But I was actually really lucky in the sense that it was kind of just before I'd graduated. I was kind of handing in my dissertation, and I was like, dealing with all of that stress and the end of year. And in my society, we were at the end of the year with like all the celebrations and everything. And I obviously was kind of just like, I'm going to do what everybody kind of suggests you to do and look for jobs. I recently like improved my CV and like done a bit of a portfolio because like, I did creative media. So I kind of wanted to show off practically the things I'd done. And yeah, but it was kind of an accident. I sort of stumbled across the graduate scheme here. I think I might have seen it on LinkedIn or something. Like I hadn't really ever known about it. I knew it was a relatively new thing. I think maybe it had started the year before me. And it kind of went in straight with the line of like, if you're graduating in 2024 or you've graduated in 2023, you can apply for this. So I thought, oh, well, it looks really interesting. And going through the roles, I literally had just instantly saw one that I was like, that is something that I would want to do. I think it took me probably until like the last half of third year to really like look at what I was good at and what I wanted to do and say like, look, I want to do social media stuff. I want to be writing. I want to be on socials. I want to make videos, because as much as like my course was doing that, we had people that wanted to be like video editors or, like photographers specifically. And it was kind of hard to hone in on what I specifically wanted to do. I looked at the responsibilities, of course, and I was kind of like, well, I do a few TikTok videos here and there, and I like at that point I was kind of just like really enjoying making videos with my friends, and like I just obviously saw it as a bit of a social aspect, but a way for me to kind of like get to grips with editing and stuff and use my experience that I'd got from uni. So yeah, I applied for it, and then I was really lucky. I had my interview in May. So before I'd actually officially graduated, I managed to secure this job, which I'm still in now, which is amazing. And yeah, I love it so much. But it was definitely one of those cases in which it was luck and timing, but also just me being open-minded, I think.
Yeah, because I was going to ask like how you experienced the interview process, and did you have many interviews before that, or was this the first one that you
No.
interviewed for? And kind of like, how did you kind of gather yourself up and prep yourself and be like, right, let's prepare for this interview?
Yeah,
I can give you a review if you'd like.
Well, for those that are trying to pick up the context here, Matt was actually one of the people that was interviewing me, along with my other boss called Lucy. And yeah, it was quite nerve-wracking. I think I had a couple of interviews before, but they were sort of for part-time roles. So during university, I worked part-time as a domestic cleaner. So it was a lot more of a down-to-earth chat, and it wasn't like I felt like I needed to show off anything too much. But for this, it's really weird. Like I find it personally really difficult to talk about my achievements, and I feel like it comes across like I'm like bragging and gloating, and I don't like that. So I was really nervous, but I think the process here especially was really good. You know, they sent us the questions in advance, and if I'm being completely honest, I actually listened to a podcast the morning of, and it was like, listen to this the day of your interview. So I went in with the mindset of like, look, I'm gonna listen to all the tips that these girls on this podcast have given me, and I'm just gonna be myself. Like,
Yeah, I think that's only like all you can do.
all you can do. I was just chatty, I think, smiley. I was honest. You know, a lot of the questions were like, "Oh, how would your friends describe you?" and like, "What skills can you offer?" And I I think the biggest thing is drawing back to experience and drawing back to stuff during university. As Matt said with the whole volunteering thing, like, you don't have to have something that's necessarily paid work to prove that you've gained experience or gained skills from something. So I was kind of just drawing back on my own personal TikTok and, you know, things I've come up with out of my own initiative, because during my course I decided to set up my own podcast. So those are the kind of things I spoke about in the interview, and then yeah, I was lucky enough to get it.
Here you
But
are.
I've found it pretty smooth sailing, but I know that it's not the same for everyone, and I definitely experienced that the anxiety and the sort of like worry of, will I have to move back home, and like what kind of jobs are on the market. And I do think in this like social media sphere it's a lot harder because there's not a lot on offer, especially in certain areas in the UK. So yeah, I would say it was lucky, and I'm very grateful for it, but yeah, very normal at the same time.
There are a lot of intangibles as well, though. I think, the baseline for, oh, I'm going to go and interview is, I've been on a couple of interview panels, and you see someone and they're amazing and they've got this great body of work, but fundamentally, like you say, if you come in and you're really authentic and you're just yourself,
Yeah.
you don't you come in, and at the end of the day, honestly, a lot of the decisions when I've been on interview panels are, can we work with this person?
I literally said, we were literally talking about this
Yeah.
yesterday because I was actually recently speaking to an employer, like not for me but just family friend, and they were talking about interview, and I think what she kind of explained is that once you get through to the interview, you're all really technically on
Yeah.
the same level.
Yeah.
So it's just a case of like you being yourself and
Yeah.
like you said, wanting to work with that person. So I think like as much as experience and that's really, really important. I think also it's just being your authentic self and just kind of believing in what you have to give and having that confidence, because I don't think it
Definitely.
comes across as arrogance. Like you have to sell
Yeah,
yourself.
exactly.
It's kind of like it's very transactional in an interview, but you are
Yeah.
there to sell yourself. But also importantly, I find in interviews it's not just about you wanting them to want you. You've got to want to work there as well. So
100%.
it's just as much kind of you interviewing them as them interviewing you, which
Yeah.
I find
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the body of work and the experience that you
Yeah.
put forward in your application, that gets you in the room, and the rest of it is all
About
on.
you.
Yeah, it's about you. It's about yourself, and it's, yeah, like you say, it's you feeling out that situation and them getting to know you and that kind of thing. And it's, I think honestly, and it's something that I've noticed. Obviously, I work with you guys on the grad scheme. Like, confidence is, like you say it there. Oh, I feel like I'm lucky to have this job.
Yeah.
It wasn't luck that you got this job. It was, you earned this job. So it's like,
yes,
I think it's the confidence in being able to say, actually, I'm really good at this.
Yeah.
And I think and I know that's really difficult because in a modern age, we do conflate confidence with arrogance.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true. I'm not an arrogant person, but I can confidently sit here and say that I'm very good at what I do.
Yeah.
And I think if you can do that in a way that's also humble, I'm not pretending I'm better than anybody else. But yeah, it's just being yourself.
Definitely.
And I think that is such a positive thing to tell anybody when they're going into a space where they're like, oh, what am I going to do next?
Yeah. I know, Molly, you had a similar sort of experience
I know,
in terms of the application and
Mhm.
like being able to go into something straight away, especially at this university. But how did you find the interview process yourself? Was it slightly different to what I experienced? Or?
Yeah, well, mine got moved last minute to online, and that to me is like my worst fear because I'm such a people person. I feel like you connect so much better with people
In
face to
person.
face. So I really felt a bit of a defeat, I suppose, before I'd even got in there and got in the interview. So it was definitely a different experience for me. And like navigating that was like really hard. but I did really enjoy it, surprisingly, online.
Yeah.
I feel as though I just had to adapt to what was kind of given to me. I had a panel as well, so that was like kind of weird because obviously on Teams it's like squares of just faces.
How many people
like
did you have?
I think I had 4 people on my panel, maybe
Wow.
3. And yeah, some really important people. So I was like, yep, I really have to lock in. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And before I got my job, I was working as a retail supervisor. And it was that kind of like, right, I was I was the same as you. So I was mid-writing my dissertation. I was working in New Look, and it was all just a lot.
Yeah.
And I seen it on LinkedIn, and yeah, I've got the
Just
job.
thought, why not?
That was it. But yeah, my experience was a bit more. I just think I had to adapt a bit more to it because I feel
Yeah.
like I'm much more of like a in-person kind of person.
Yeah.
In-person kind of person.
Yeah,
That's
I
great
get that
advice.
though. I think it's
But-
awkward on calls sometimes. On Teams calls, that's something I had to adapt to with working here. I
Yeah.
think
It's talking. It's like the because there's like a delay as
It's
well.
the
So in my
lag, yeah.
interview, I remember thinking like, I really don't want to talk now and be talking over
someone else.
Like this is
yeah.
kind of all of their first impressions of me. So I was like really just waiting for this like whole
I find
screen
as
to
well,
go quiet.
yeah, and you don't know where to look. I'm like trying to look at the camera and then I'm looking at myself, and it's
honestly.
like
I
can
did get the job,
imagine.
so
but you must
It
have smashed
works.
it. So
it worked.
I think the
Perfect.
first job I ever got, the sports journalism job, was I had an online meeting and interview, and I joined. You know, like during COVID when you would do Zoom quizzes with the family, and I'd put like a stupid name as as my name. I
Oh,
joined this Zoom
no.
call
I can.
with that name. I still got the job, but yeah. I
That's
can't remember what it.
crazy.
I think
I was
I
going to
might.
ask you what
I
the
think
name
it might
was.
have been. It was a play on my grandma's name. I'm
Oh my
convinced.
gosh,
So he was like,
Matt.
"What?
You
But
must
yeah,
have done a really good interview just to
Yeah.
have got it after that.
just massively distract them from."
That was a really nice conversation to end the
Yes.
episode on.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Matt.
Thank you for joining us, and
very
thank you for
welcome.
sharing your experience. I mean, that last bit could potentially be ignored by the listeners, but
Yes,
but
don't
the
do
rest
that.
of it was very valuable. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you
And
very
stay
much.
tuned because we're gonna bring on our second guest for this episode.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second half of this episode. And now we're going to speak to Sam from the careers team and sort of get more of a focus on careers and where you can go, life after uni, etc., and sort of gain her insights. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sam, and I'm the Graduate Success Manager at Baspar Uni. So I work in our careers and employability team, supporting graduates, basically. Yeah.
Perfect.
I was just gonna ask to start off with like maybe what you do on a day-to-day basis and how like obviously your support can differ.
Yeah, so my job's really varied. So I work mainly with final year students and recent graduates. So that's anyone up to about 2 years after they've graduated. So what me and my team do on a day-to-day basis is kind of offering one-to-one supports to final years who might be thinking, what am I going to do next? We might also be talking to graduates about, you've left university, you've been through this big transition. Have you had time to think about what you want to do? How can we support you? So those kind of, I guess, more basic careers tasks that you might think about having a one-to-one session. But my team also run lots of different programs. So we run internships for recent graduates. We run the graduate scheme that you're both on, as well as kind of lots of other different initiatives for specific groups of students and graduates. So yeah, quite varied.
Perfect. Well, I was just going to say, like, so you have that support going on from, is that 2 years after you graduate, did you say?
Yeah, about 2 years.
That's amazing. So I think obviously it's going to be different from place to place, but it's a really handy tool. I feel like as much as we're on the graduate scheme, it's like we're not 100% clued up on like sort of what support there was. And I think for a lot of people that are in that boat of, maybe second year going into third year, they might not know sort of what's on offer. So people like you are, really, really helpful and can really help us to sort of boost our careers and sort of know where to go afterwards, because I'm sure you've experienced a lot of people that kind of have been feeling anxious about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when you're at university, that's the time when you can get all the information about what is available to you. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of the time when you're in your final year, I didn't think about it. You're probably not thinking about it. You're thinking, right, I've got to get through all of these assessments, these exams, my dissertation. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to be doing, in a couple of years or whatever it might be. But actually, it can sometimes feel quite difficult to find that information afterwards.
Yeah.
And when you're here, it's worth just finding out what is available to you, what support does your uni offer. You don't need to access that straight away.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you kind of have to be, consistently in touch with us. But like a lot of universities have lifetime career support.
Yeah.
So like I didn't, until I started working in careers, I didn't realize that my university had lifetime career support.
Yeah.
I didn't
And
even realize it until you said it, to be
yeah,
fair.
so it's worth just finding that out, knowing what's available to you, and then if you are in a position 6 months, 12 months, a couple of years down the line where you're like, actually, I could really do with someone to talk to about this for free, that's going to give me support and guidance on how can I find the next best step, how can I build a network,
Yeah.
and these things are, as I say, not necessarily something you have to be thinking about now, but just know what you can access, because then it's there for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think as well, just like from my experience, because I only graduated last year, I felt that there was like a lot of pressure. Obviously, I'm in my final year, I'm tunnel vision, dissertation, but I think it's also important, like as a business school student, like that careers after that, after you've got a business degree, is like there's so much that's almost overwhelming to kind of pick out which ones do I like, which ones am I ruling out. So I feel like your expertise can kind of help filter and really find kind of an avenue to go down. And I think that that's like obviously transferable for other students as well. I don't know
Yeah.
whether that's your experience as well, Sess, but like
Definitely. And like I know that, everybody in careers is there to support you, and everyone's been so supportive since we've graduated, even though we're still here. And I know not everyone has a similar experience, but it's just nice to know that you kind of have that support. And as I said, it's not, and as you said, like it's not a resource that I necessarily thought about before, because you get so caught up in it sometimes. But definitely look into what your university offers and sort of see who's out there to support you, because there's going to be support available,
100%.
and you shouldn't feel alone in feeling anxious about what's coming next, because it's very, very normal to feel that way. So
100%. Like even Matt was saying, like a lot of students come from far away and they move to Bath. So it's like not only have you got the stress of like your final year and all of your assessments and assignments, but you've got that fear of, do I move back home
Yeah.
for a job or do I stay here? And do you get a lot of that as well with
Yeah,
students
I
coming
think
in?
I think that's what is important to say, is that it's not just, oh, can you help me look at my CV? Like, is this as good as it can be?
yeah,
A lot of the support we offer can be around, okay, like you're thinking about this transition. What is that going to look like for you? What are your priorities? It doesn't have to be a kind of, I've got this job, I'm going to apply for it. Can you help me make my application as good as possible?
yeah,
Obviously, we do that, and that's great. But if you're a couple of steps behind that, and actually you're thinking, I just need some support to work out how do I get through this next phase, you might be feeling a bit anxious about, friends being at different points. Some people might have had jobs lined up from placement years, some people might be going on to grad schemes.
yeah,
And if you're feeling a little bit lost, we're a really great place to start in terms of just helping you through that transition, thinking about what your first steps might be, even if that's saying, do you know what? Put your foot on the brake, like just relax a little bit,
yeah,
think about what might be available to you, think about kind of the networks you've already got, the experience you've got, and we can take it from there. It doesn't have to be a really structured conversation around finding a job or applying for a job.
yeah.
It's thinking about those steps.
Yeah, so it's not only helping with those like practical skills, but it's also, helping with general well-being and sort of seeing like
Absolutely.
the next steps to map out where you go, because it's daunting. And those 3 years or 4 years, or if you've done postgrad, like they go really fast.
So fast.
And then you get so like caught up in it, and you sort of, it is sort of anxiety inducing. But
It's just like you guys, I suppose, are there to provide, sorry, like a confidence boost for students as well,
Yeah.
because obviously we talk about stress during uni all the time, but I think it's important that when you do think about careers after uni, it's like you need that kind of confidence boost back, that actually you can kind of realize that you've not just got a degree, but you've done other stuff as well, and kind of helping them kind of out of their experience and their like things that they've done, like practical wise, like what they can kind of go into and what they want to go into.
Yeah, and like we definitely take, or here we definitely, and most career services will take a strengths-based and skills-based approach. So sometimes it can be really helpful just to have someone who's impartial sit down with you and say, okay, what have you done? What are you good at? And sometimes it's really hard to articulate that yourself because you are
Yes.
so wrapped up in, I don't know, you might think, I've done a business degree, so I'm probably going to have to do something corporate. I'm probably going to have to do XYZ role. But actually having someone on the outside who's impartial talk to you about that and say like, oh, actually, I like doing XYZ and it's really creative and that's just something I do in my part-time. It's really helpful to have someone speak to you about that and say,
Yeah.
that's a skill, like that's something you've developed. Is that something you want to explore further? So it's not, it's not necessarily just kind of what you think you can do. It really helps to have someone else talk to you about that and that impartiality, I think.
That does really ring true as well, because like
Yeah.
even just me being a business student, you think of like the general things you can go in, so HR, marketing, finance, but also like I've ended up out of my job in the graduate scheme, the thing that I enjoy the most is like social media and creating content just from like a phone and kind of doing it with you as well. And I think it's really important because I feel like sometimes you can't see that for yourself until maybe you just stumble across it or you get guidance to it. So I think that's really important as well.
Definitely. We have a couple of questions to ask, sort of general questions to answer sort of what people might be feeling at the moment. So the first one is when should students start applying for jobs?
I think it's a really good question, and I think it's quite difficult to answer. So if you're thinking about graduate jobs, it depends what kind of job you want to go for. If you're thinking about a corporate graduate scheme, there's a time of the year called milk round. So graduate employers call it milk round, usually from kind of September to Christmas. So if you're thinking about that kind of job, that's when you need to be thinking about looking for these roles and applying for them. They're going to be open for a period of time. After that, they're closed. It's not going to be accessible to you for another year. So if you're thinking about something like that with a bigger employer, I would be starting to look over the summer when they'll open those roles, doing your research around kind of applying to them. A lot of people don't want to do that, obviously, and that's where it becomes a little bit more nuanced in terms of the jobs that you're looking at. I would certainly say across your final year, just be looking at things. You don't have to be applying. Obviously, you can only start once your course is finished. So if it's not a very specific graduate role, be thinking about that, but just start to look at what's available to you and kind of, how you can think about jobs you're interested in. So you're not getting to that point in July and then thinking, oh God, I don't know what I want to do. I hate all of these jobs. There's nothing being advertised. Just start to look at that. You can speak to employers. There's nothing stopping you giving people a call, sending an email, asking the questions. Start to do that information gathering as soon as possible. But I think the key thing to remember is it's fine if you don't, because there will always be things that you can do and you can look at. So I appreciate that's not a really direct response, but I think it depends on the kind of job you're looking for, the circumstance that you're in, and the point that you're at in terms of your confidence and where you are in that transition. But just don't shut it off. Be thinking about it and keep an eye on things, I would say.
Perfect.
Well, you did actually answer a bit of our final question. So what's one thing students should do before graduating? If you had to sum up into one thing that they should do, what would
I
it
think
be?
probably to go back to our earlier conversation, it is engaging with your careers service. I think that is the one piece of advice I would really, really encourage people to do, because the expertise within those teams is phenomenal. So whether you want to start your own business, whether you want to work freelance, whether you want a very traditional employment route, there will be expertise within that team to support you. So I would really encourage you, whatever point you're at, whether you are a couple of years out from graduating, you're graduating now, you graduated a couple of years ago, engage with your career service, because they will be best placed to support you.
Amazing.
That's brilliant.
Thank
Thank you for the roundup, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I think just to finish this episode off, we just wanted to say that, there's support available for you, definitely, even if it's within wellbeing or if it's within careers, definitely look into what your university offers, because there's so much available and there's so many routes and options that you could take. It's a very exciting but also nerve-wracking time. So we completely understand. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you,
Thank
Sam.
you.
Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.